This is Family Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Richard Spegal. You're the author of the Eternal Knights and Wolves and Ravens trilogy. Welcome to the Family Electric Ghost podcast. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to talk to creative people. And we started this podcast initially talking to all types of creative people, primarily singer-songwriters, but then we segged into novelists, filmmakers, painters, any type of creative type of person. So that's kind of the space we're in. Before we get to the heart of your story, we'll let people know that we use Podmatch to actually find guests for our podcast. If you use the QR code, if you're a podcaster or you're somebody who wants to be a guest on a podcast, check that out, that QR code. You can find out how to align yourself with the show that you'd like to be a guest on, or if you're a podcast, get guest for your show. But moving on, one question we ask every guest that comes on the show before we get to the heart of your story is like, what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
I write because I almost have no choice. I mean, I have all these things in my head and these fantasy worlds that I live in and stuff like that, it's got to get out. So I write mostly for me. And
So is that something that you've done? When did you start writing?
I've been writing off and on since high school, so a long, long time. It's just only in the recent times have I actually started publishing things where I've decided that I'm gonna just keep doing it. So I've just been getting stuff published ever since.
That's always interesting. I always ask creative people, what gave you kind of like the permission structure to believe that you could tell your story? Whether I talk to a filmmaker, an author, or a musician, like there's lots of people have ideas, but the ones who actually put them down and then push them out further than that to actually get them in people's hands, was that sounds like you're doing that now. Is that something that you always dreamed about?
I always thought about it only because I wanted to do it. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't put food on the table, it's a hobby. It's not something you do all the time. So that was kind of like one of the main reasons where we got deployed a couple of years ago, and I knew I would have some time. So I was like, let me give this a shot. And once I let the genie out of the bottle, I couldn't stop. It's actually a bit of a problem. I can't stop. I'm in these worlds all the time, and I just keep writing stuff down. That's why I published so many books so quickly. My publisher actually had to tell me to stop publishing.
Yeah, that's a problem I have as a musician. I'm like crazy. I got like 3,000 songs. But it's like some people, like you get that bug, right? Ever since I was like 12 years old, I learned how to play piano, and I never stopped going. There's lots of guys when I was a teenager that I was in bands, like basement bands, garage bands, bar bands. And, a lot of people stopped because their wife told them to stop. The guitar's in the garage, in the basement, and never picked it up again. But there's certain people like yourself, it's like you don't stop. You just keep on doing it because it's like part of you. Like the creative process, you're going to do it whether it's going to come out or not. Somebody's going to buy it or not. You just do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's interesting.
But it can actually be a problem. Like you can't stop. But you have, there's a real world out there that you have to do stuff in. And sometimes it's tough because you can't distinguish between these fantasy worlds that you're living in and then the real world. It makes great stories, but not a great life sometimes.
Yeah, well, that's always the artist conundrum. A lot of times artists, like especially musicians, it's kind of like the starving artist. You get the artist that was like, I'm legitimate because I'm in this little like niche, and because I'm not in the top 10, I'm not in the top 50. That means I'm the real deal, right? But that doesn't pay the mortgage. So you always got to have a side. You always have your main gig, and then you have your real deal, like your passion. And some people feel like, I got to be the starving artist, so they really don't have a main gig, and that becomes a problem. So it's like it's trying to weave that, like, how am I responsible for my household and still be an artist? So is that something you were able to kind of just manage because you're in the National Guard and you have like a good day job?
Well, I'm retired now. I was medically retired this past February of 2025. I keep forgetting we're in the new year now. So I was medically retired. One of the reasons that got me medically retired is the same thing that like being stuck, being what the government considers crazy, but being able to use that to create these things that are completely real because they're real to me. And you just make it work, and you just keep doing whatever you have to do.
Well, I think it's interesting because a lot of times, like I've talked to artists, right, and a lot of artists are neurodivergent, and so they tend to be a little different, right? They tend to be like a little, like most artists have something about them that allows them to be by themselves and create like a world within themselves. Like a painter creates a world, and to do that, you're a little bit antisocial, a little bit, because you have to be able to set the time to actually create that world,
Yeah,
and makes you a little different. Maybe people might find you odd. They might find you like, why is that? Why is that artist thing? Like, well, he's an artist. He's an author. He's a writer. So you get that label. Oh, okay, that's that type of person they are.
well, and a lot of the people throughout history that we celebrate as being the best ones, I mean, they all had one thing in common, is that they were not normal individuals. They
Yeah.
suffered from various things, and they saw and heard things differently from regular people, but they had the ability to put those things on either a canvas or a page or a block of marble or something. So
Yeah.
for them, it was tormenting them, but they were able to do it in such a way that the average person could actually see from their perspective.
Yeah, I think the thing about being an artist is like we're very good at observing like the world outside, but also the world inside.
Yes.
It's like what's in, and it's like a really good artist. It's a synthesis of what's inside of you, right, and also what's outside the world, and and so you're able to take stuff that other people can actually recognize, right, and then the things inside yourself that also resonate because other people maybe are too scared to go into that
Yeah.
or to discuss that. But then people, when they read your material or they see your work, they find things that like, oh, that seems interesting to me. That resonates with them. And because that's the key that every artist has, is that's what we can do, right?
Yeah.
So you like to live in a world or create worlds through like the magic and mystery, the kind of like that fantasy space, but it's like you want to do something within fantasy that's a little different. Like what's your secret sauce? Like what makes your work like stand out?
I would say originality. I create things. I mean, in some ways, I don't even think I create them. They're just there, like in my head and stuff like that. But it hasn't been done. I get asked for comparables, things like that. Sometimes it's a common question, and it's like I can't answer that question. I can't compare my work to anything, because if I could, I wouldn't have written it. I would have written something else. And like when it comes to like the fantasy, I don't use the same fantasy races that everybody uses. I mean, everybody's been writing the same thing for decades. I went in a different direction. And a lot of my writing in every genre that I write in, one of the things that separates it is how psychological it gets, and how I get into like the brutal detail that people either are afraid to write or they don't know how.
Mm-hmm. So you're trying to like serve like adult readers, right? Like this isn't for like young adult. This is for
No,
adult readers.
no. I would definitely. I mean, these days, young adults are exposed to a lot of things that we would consider maybe R or something like that. But
Hmm.
officially, I would say no. My writing is intended for a more mature audience. It takes a little bit more life experience to understand some of the concepts. like the relationships in my books tend to be like long-term relationships, or the people are married, or something like that. It just resonates with an older audience. And then when you get into like a lot of the psychological stress and mental breakdowns and things like that, a younger audience isn't necessarily going to have the frame of reference to understand what's happening.
Also, I was just wondering, in today's world where people's attention span are so short, like I grew up in the 70s and people would read 200,000 word, 300,000 word books. Now I've heard that a lot of writers have to write 60,000, 70,000 word, 50,000 word books. So what kind of space are you in?
It doesn't matter. The story is as long as the story is. My shortest book was 90,000 words. My longest book so far it hasn't been published yet. It's 180,000 words.
So that's outside the norm based on today's world.
Yeah, it's what matters is the pacing, how the story is told. If you do it right, it doesn't matter how long the book is or the attention span of the reader, because they're completely immersed and they can't stop.
Yeah, well, it's like you got to serve the story. Like I say, as a musician, you get a lot of people today tell us like we can't write a song more than like 2 minutes, right? But I'm like a fusion jazz artist, so like all fusion jazz stuff goes like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So like in today's world, how do you present that to an audience that only wants to hear 2 minutes? Well, that's not my audience. So you write for what, like you write what you're going to write. Right?
Exactly.
And whatever the story, if it serves the story, if it's 200,000, if it's 80,000, whatever it is,
And because they say, I mean, that's just one of those, they say, it's a rule of thumb that they just like to say. But like I said, it doesn't matter if the audience enjoys it, because there is a rule of thumb for debut authors are supposed to focus around 90,000 words. I read that somewhere. Anything more than 90,000 words, that's too long for your first book. But the story has to be served, and it's over when it's over.
Yeah, I mean, if your story doesn't work within this like 90,000 artificial limit, then you're going to be like kind of wrecking the structure of your work to just fit the market. And I've always been the kind of person that's like, you don't know what's going to work. Like we live in a world where people love to clone because of the algorithms.
Yeah.
I want to clone something that's like going to be a known success. I'm going to use this trope. I'm going to use this meme. I'm going to use this whatever. And people like, music, they use samples, they use loops, like you're just rehashing something that was done. I was like, what about actually coming up with something new?
Yeah. And that's not, that has been so absent from all forms of media for so many years that people almost don't recognize it anymore. Everybody's standards have come down because they're not being provided with the quality that they deserve. And the industry's been failing everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, being a big fan of like Rod Serling and Gene Roddenberry, and also like Victorian poets. Like I love Wordsworth, I love Blake, I love Lord Byron. And what I like about the Victorians is like, you got Blake is very succinct, very short. His poems are like the shortest of all the Victorians. Like Wordsworth and these other guys are super verbose. But it's like, so Blake was kind of going against the cut, like his version, but he wasn't known in his time. Like people don't realize William Blake his stuff was found in a barn. He wasn't famous in his time. Like, because everybody, the style at that time was like more verbose. And he wasn't that way.
A lot of those guys didn't really get recognized until they were gone.
Till they were gone. Yeah, some of them were kind of big deals, but a lot of them weren't. Like a lot of them were like Wordsworth, or like Blake was totally unknown. But it's just like the thing is, I like the level of work in some of the older work. Like if you read, something from the 1970s, like any kind of science fiction stuff, Isaac Asimov or Ben Bova.
Oh yeah.
The stuff is deep, and it's not meant for you to read quickly. You have to find the Easter eggs. You have to figure out stuff. You might have to go back and look at it again. And I'm wondering, do you find that people tell you you have to write at it? Well, I guess you don't care what they tell you, but like there's a lot of people who say, well, you know, I can't really overfill this book with too many Easter eggs or too many plot twists or all this stuff because though this audience is not willing to engage at that.
Well, I don't. How's the best way to answer? When it comes to the actual writing, like I say, like I can't stress. I write the story. I don't think about the audience, because if you think about the audience, I know it seems counterintuitive because you want the audience to like it because you know they need to like it. But if you create it without thinking about the audience, then the audience's impact isn't there. It's a real story.
Mm-hmm.
Too many things pander to the audience, and that makes them fake. So when you create something without thinking about the audience, you've actually created something the audience likes more.
And more authentic.
The biggest compliment I get, I love it when I meet people and they don't say like, oh, this was good or oh, this was great. No, they look at me and they're confused and they just say, how did you do this? I love that compliment. Like, how did you create this? Because it just like the way the combination of a good story with good storytelling, it's just been lost.
Yeah, because I mean, like one of the things I was reading about, like, you like to go into the dark corners, the moral risk, real emotions. You don't like to sugarcoat consequences. So that means that there's a lot of detail, right? There's a lot of emotional depth, right? And it's not going to be just you know, it's like probably I think there's a lot of junk food art.
Yes.
And
I like that phrase. Yeah.
Like sometimes you want to go to that, you know, restaurant where the guy actually makes it by hand. It's not part of a franchise, right? That I don't need a franchise, right? I need to go to this restaurant because he does it he creates the noodles from hand by hand, right? He does his own pasta. He does his own bread. He's not getting it from some suppliers. Everything's handmade. So when you see like an independent artist that doesn't care about the algorithm, that just does what they feel, which means one book might not be what the last book is, right? Because they're going to go with where their gut tells them to go.
Yeah. And I like doing that. And it's not something that a lot of people can do because you have to know what you're right. You have to understand what you're talking about, or it's not going to make sense. In visual media, movies and TV shows, you can get away with it because it's visual, everything's pretty quick. Mm-hmm. But in the book, there's a lot more space. If you don't know what you're talking about, it comes across real quick. And a lot of people, they don't know how to detail that darker side of what's really happening when the stress of what you're surviving gets to you. It kind of helps to be crazy, I guess.
Well, I think it's good to have a different, like, I think just having a creative mindset that's not, it's kind of like the other, right? If you everybody like the typical, like what's in, you get this idea like the bell curve, like everybody that's in the middle, that's kind of like, okay, that's like living in a box, like going to work in the cubicle, versus the person who's on the outer edge is like the person that comes up with something like, well, they're not going to be a normal person. Like you get the person who comes up with all these ideas, they don't actually usually work that well in a cubicle. They usually can't go do the 9-to-5 job. The person who comes up with the weird thing, they might be up at 2 a.m, right? They might be like not able to do that same output every day, but the world wants you to be able to do that and repeat it. And you might do something different every time, and maybe they just want you to be like, you know, Ford assembly line.
Yeah.
Build that Model T the same way every day.
Yeah, you know? Like I'll be stuck somewhere. Well, like I said, it's a problem. I'll be stuck somewhere in the house. I'll be pacing around in circles for days. And in my head, I'm just with all these characters that are as real to me as my own children. To the extent that I have to actually be told, like my wife will have to tell me, like, you realize it's been 3 days, you have to eat something. Like, your kid needs you. things like that, because I'm stuck in these worlds, and I just write down what I see.
Yeah, I mean that's when like if you get to like a painter, he gets stuck on the canvas for like 8 hours. Or you get a musician that's in the studio and they've been playing the same bass line for 6 hours, or
Yeah.
putting down tons and tons of tracks, and then still not being done. And it's like, well, you gotta show up at the gig. It's like, I don't want to do the gig. I want to write the song.
It's the total opposite of writer's block. The total opposite, to where you have so much that you're stuck. Like,
yeah, sometimes you put too much out
at the same time.
Yeah, because that's like in terms of like process. I mean, there's some authors, I've talked to some people with fantasy things. They build these worlds, big outlines, big character designs. It's all planned out really to the nth degree, right? It's all like storyboarded out. It's all all the characters are all done. And there's other people, like it's kind of whatever, it kind of flow state. It kind of flows out. And then maybe it's a little bit of everything. Maybe it's a little bit of that or a little bit of this. It's like, is your style kind of like, do you have a certain thing, or did this comes to you like a download?
I used to try to do like an outline thing, only because, well, I loved writing and I was younger. So I wanted to write the way I learned in school, like a more formal whatever. But when I would actually write, none of that stuff would happen. Like every book I have ever written has gone completely different from how I've planned, because the story just takes off and it grows organically. So I don't outline everything. It's just, like I said, like I live in these worlds. I just stop and write it down. I'll do, like, when it comes to like some background stuff to keep things straight for continuity, because Eternal Nights is turning into a science fiction series. So the cast of characters is in like the thousands. Mm-hmm. So I'll have to write down people's names and stuff just so I don't screw it up in the books, Yeah. But other than that, no, the story it's in a flow state.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I have always been kind of in a flow state. Well, being a musician, we're trained in a classical method. We're trained to like read the sheet music, read the classical guys, like learn the structure. But as soon as you start to write your own stuff, you think you have to write that structure, and then you find that the flow state stuff that you do works better than anything you orchestrate. A lot of times, if I've talked to musicians, it's like the stuff they tried to plan out never worked, versus when they actually let it flow.
Because it's real. When you're in flow state, it's honest, it's real, and that comes through in the product.
Yeah, I think every time I run into people, they get too tied into being like exact, and I find that there's a big problem with the digital world that we have. Is like people can go back and hit the undo. They go in, and it used to be like you would be at the typewriter and you type it, and it's kind of what it is, and it's going and erasing it is harder than trying to go forward. And now you can just go in. Yeah, it's like, so it's. If you try to flow state today and somebody's on their computer, they'll go back and they'll try to correct a note, or the filmmakers go in, they overcorrect. There's like so much editing that sometimes you wreck. You're like a musician example is like you do 100 takes of something, and really the fourth take was what you really wanted to do, but you just keep on destroying it because you keep on trying to redo it, and you've lost the plot.
Yeah. I love that about editing. That's a big problem in writing. Like, editing is important. It's very important to properly edit something, but you can fall in that hole. And like you said, it was fine 50 edits ago, and you're still changing stuff, and now it's a completely different story. Like there's actually another rule of thumb: no author should ever edit their own work. I understand why people say that, but I will never let somebody else edit my work either. Like I will separate the creative from the analytical, and I do my own edits, and it's been working out great ever since.
Yeah, because I think you got to get that level of confidence. Like it's like when you have somebody that's like somebody who's able to like produce, like as a musician, like there's some musicians say, well, there's no way I'm going to produce myself, because they just can't get on the board. They don't know what to do. Right. And then you got other musicians that'll go, like a Frank Zappa, like a Prince, like certain musicians, they can go in and they can do everything. Like
Yeah.
they'll engineer because they actually have a vision. So when you have somebody that has a vision, if they let somebody else, engineer or producer, come in, they've wrecked the vision. So if you're confident enough to know what your vision is, then you can do that. But some people, I think they second guess themselves. They can't do it. So they have to have somebody do it.
Well, it does make sense, especially like we were talking about being in a flow state. And that's wonderful when it comes to creativity and writing. But then in order to edit, you do have to be able to stop that. You have to take that's great thing that you created, and you have to be able to go through it very carefully, line by line, analytically, not creatively, but analytically, making sure that you're fixing all the mechanics and stuff. And yeah, and like I said, not everybody can do both, and that's fine. And that's why you have people out there that can do it for you, as long as do it once. Don't edit it like 100 times, because you're always gonna find somebody's always gonna find something that they're gonna tell you need to change.
Yeah, that's the problem, because like it really does change like everything. Like if you let your engineer take your song, they can totally color it into a different way. It's not what you intended at all. So then if you don't trust yourself as like, I intended it to be this. But if you let the engineer and the producer come in, they'll change it to whatever they think it should be. And then if you think their judgment is better because they're going to make you money, or they're going to get it in the top 10, versus, well, maybe this song shouldn't be in the top 10. Maybe it's supposed to be something that only certain people, like a Frank Zappa, like he purposely did stuff, right, that wasn't ever going to be top 10, right? Because that's what he wanted to do. If he wanted to be top 10, he could have done it, but he didn't do it that way.
Well, then, and a lot of times especially when you have professional editors, and like when we're talking about books and stuff, they only look at the one work. Now, all of my books are part of a series.
Oh,
so
yeah.
None of them are standalone. So each book does have stuff in it that technically isn't necessary for that particular book, but it makes sense as part of the series. Like
a bigger book, bigger structure.
Questions from a prior thing, background plots, stuff like that. So I've had editors will look at a single book and it's just like, you've got like 40 wasted pages. It's like, well, no, you idiot. That's like book 2 of 3. Like, I need that stuff.
Yeah, because you're setting something up. I mean, it's like exactly. Because if you're setting something up, this is the problem, is the big plot. Like it's like you're setting up stuff like a musician sets up an album. And if you pick the single versus the deeper cuts, especially if you have an album where things work together, you'll get your A&R guys that want to turn every song into the single.
Okay. Yeah.
But that doesn't actually make the story work.
Right. Like the editor will be like, well, I don't understand what you're saying here, because those are answers to questions in the first book. Yeah. You can't retell the story in every single book, because each book would end up being like 300 pages longer than the next book. You reference a few things. You want people to be able to enjoy it, even if they didn't read something prior, but you intentionally don't retell the entire story. So
somebody goes in, I mean, it's not your responsibility if somebody picks up the second book instead of the first book. Yeah. To bring that person up to speed. I mean, it's up to them to go be interested and go find it.
I mean, you can make a few references and things like that, but yeah, and there are going to be things, especially like Eternal Nights is going to be a series with like 30 or 40 books in it. So if you pick up like 10 years from now, if you pick up book 21, man, I don't know what you're going to understand. You're the one that picked up book 21.
Yeah, that's on you. You don't got to go in to try to explain the whole concept. Yeah. Like, it's like, you just have to, like, somebody goes into a Star Wars movie and they don't, like, I don't get it. But did you ever watch the first ones? It's like, you don't get it because you don't, like, okay, well, if you're not a Trekkie and you don't get it, right? Trekkies are like diehards. Like, they know everything.
Exactly.
They know Vulcan, they know Klingon. They'll actually do it. They'll actually speak the language. So it's like you get people who are really tied into it, and that's kind of what you want your fans to be so drawn in. Yes. That they get like that, right? That they get so deep into your world that they're at like the fantasy convention and they're actually like mimicking your characters and stuff.
Yeah, the questions I get the people who read Wolves and Ravens, like I get some, I don't want to say weird questions, but I get some weird questions that like people are looking for like these really deep answers and things. And it's like, sometimes it's like, dude, man, I don't know. I just wrote the world. That's how the story came out. Sorry, like I can't answer that. There was no, I didn't sit down for 3 hours and decide that there's going to be this deep background meaning between this line of dialogue.
Yeah. Yes. We get some people like maybe they get so caught up. They want to argue the direction of your character, right?
It's great. I mean, I love conversations and stuff like that. But like you mentioned Easter eggs and stuff before, like, you know, there's a lot of Easter eggs out there that aren't Easter eggs. There are things that fans have decided were Easter eggs, or the original creators, like George Lucas, like when it came to Star Wars, like they used to do interviews all the time. Like, yeah, I don't know what people are talking about, but they just decided.
People found, what Trekkies do the same thing. Yeah, Trekkies will find all this stuff and say, well, that's what this really means.
Yeah.
About the Romulan war with the Federation. I'm like, that's not what it is. You just came up with this idea.
I love the original Star Trek because when you watch it, you can tell that every episode they made, they had no idea when they were going to get canceled. They were just doing whatever they could. They had no idea it was going to be popular. And then, like I said, everybody's assigning all these meanings. It's like, dude, those creators, they were just shooting from the hip.
Yeah, they made all this stuff, and you build all these rules like, well, Romulans do this, and the Klingons do that, and this is what it's like. Really?
That's why if you look at that huge universe, the original series doesn't make any sense.
No,
all the rest of it does, but the original series doesn't because they were just making it up as they went along. They were doing it.
Yeah, it's not like what it got turned into. I mean, they built this whole empire on it, but
and then they started being careful with continuity and rules and things like that.
Yeah, people like checking stuff. It's like, well, it's got to link up with Deep Space Nine. It's got to link up with this. Exactly. So you got to have all this like cross continuity and all these like timeline things. But they're always playing with timelines, But in terms of like your characters, I think I had asked like whether or not you would go into audiobooks because of people's like ability to be, I know people like to, multitask. And like, do you feel like your readers are really tied to the written word, or do you think they would like an audiobook?
I think audiobooks definitely have a place. My target reader, I would think I'm looking at people who want to read for the sake of reading because like I believe in complicated plots too. Mm-hmm. That's another reason why I want to target like an older audience. I have had reviewers tell me, and I quote, "Your books are too cerebral for their genres." And it's like, wait, what? You just insulted the audience. You're telling me that the audience is too stupid to understand my writing. That's what you just said. That is such, and you're supposed to be like a professional reviewer. I like to think that people want to think. They want to not know what's happening. What's the point if you figured it out by page 10?
I think it's like if you have something that just hits you over the head, it's like some TV show, right? Like you're watching like, it's like Jump the Shark, or you're watching, like a $6 million man with the what is it, like when they had this Sasquatch, some stupid thing like that. It's not real well thought out. Like it's like not well put together. And so if you assume your audience is that not cerebral, then I think that's like, well, that's what you choose to do. I mean, if you choose to, that's the world you want to live in.
I mean, look, we all have our moments and things like that, but it's not a movie. It's cinematic, sure, and it could be a movie, but it's not. At this moment, it's a book. So if you're choosing to pick up a book and read it, then I'm going to make the assumption that you would like to think. You don't want to figure it all out by the trailer or by page 10. And I love it when people tell me I had no idea what was going to happen until it happened. I love that because you don't see that anymore.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. You got filmmakers that used to try to create films that would have some kind of mystery to them, and you wouldn't figure out the plot in the first 10 minutes and figure out what's going to happen. But now there's, there are people saying like, oh, you have to make it that simple, because they're assuming that the audience is that like unable to actually, to delve into anything that has any depth.
Yeah, and that's what the audience wants. The entertainment industry has destroyed their own audience. And it doesn't matter. Like every single thing that flops and loses millions of dollars, that's a sign. But they don't read the sign. They just make another flop.
Well, it's like they keep on just remaking things that were made before and poorly.
Yeah.
Like you guys won't spend any money for anything new. You go and take something that was well done and then wreck it. You take a new adaptation and you don't put the depth into it, thinking that that's what people want.
I mean, and these remakes, these budgets are ridiculous. Like you could really fund like 6 brand new movies.
Yeah, I mean, why can't you come up with some new ideas? I grew up, like when there were new ideas popping up, and now like it's so risk averse, unless you're in the indie world. Like in the indie world of indie authors and indie films and indie music, there are people trying to push things.
Yeah.
It's just that when you go to see, who's in the top 10, who's the popular, that stuff is not registering like it used to, right? So not that the stuff doesn't exist, it just is not getting pushed out and being found because they keep on just wanting to regurgitate a lot of garbage.
Well, if you think about it, it's because the professionals in the industry aren't qualified. If you think about it, the average person graduates college around 21, 22. The entertainment industry has been wrecking itself for 20 years. So you do the math, any professional in the industry under the age of 40 isn't qualified to see anything original because the things didn't exist in their lifetime in the industry. The stuff didn't exist.
Yeah, I just think the people who are curating things have like no taste.
Yeah.
It's like they're risk averse. They seem to be like, to me, like I'm into insurance. In my day job, I'm an insurance tech guy, right? System analyst. And it's kind of like actuaries are running the show, right? So like, and this is like, if you're like into engineering, like if you're building a cool car, don't let the actuary in the room, because if the actuary comes in the room, you're not going to have a cool car anymore. You're going to end up with a Pinto because they're gonna knock it down. And so that's like, if you have those guys run things, then you're not going to get anything cool.
I mean, it's just it's a different skill set. Coming up with something original and creative is a different skill set than doing a proper remake. I mean, sometimes remakes are great, or when they do adaptations, like when they make a movie out of a comic book, that's cool. Mm-hmm. That's a different skill set than coming up with something new. That same writer can't do both. That same professional isn't qualified to do both. But unfortunately, they do, which is why everything sucks now.
Yeah, because I mean, I was always like, I grew up reading Marvel comics and stuff, but I was a big independent comic book guy. Like I liked the indie comics, like the Services and ElfQuest, and like anything that was come from the indie comic companies, because these were original ideas.
Yes.
It wasn't just a new Superman, new Batman, new Spider-Man. It's like totally new worlds, totally new concepts that came from these independent authors that just decided to come up with ideas. And to me, it was like, I just like that because I felt like that was more like what you used to get with original, ideas. Like I grew up with the Time Quartet, A Wrinkle in Time. And that was so cool. I mean, Ben Bova and all these science fiction authors, I just would read really good fantasy and science fiction. And I was always looking for people who would come up with something that wasn't like a Star Wars type of thing, something that was different.
Yeah, I grew up on my dad's science fiction collection, like you mentioned earlier, like things from the 70s and stuff like that. I mean, those were all the books that he owned, and those are the books that I read as a kid.
And even though it's like those pulp magazines, like the old in the 50s, and you have all these like short story science fiction magazines.
Yeah.
That stuff is like gold. Because there's tons of ideas in those.
Now everything is just so formulaic now. I mean, it's getting to the point to where AI is going to be writing all of it because people have just given up, and it's the same formula over and over. And
that's just reading from the, AI was only taking what it found, and what it found is something that already exists.
Yeah. And nobody seems to care that nobody likes it.
Well, I think there's a lot of people selling it. Like it's a little bit, I think we're going to end up with a little bit of like a .com crash, because like the case for it is being overblown. They're saying like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And it doesn't actually fit. The tool doesn't fit every situation.
No.
And so when you overuse something, it's like when you overplayed disco and then nobody liked it, and it disappeared for 30 years. Like it will crash, and then the good uses of it, like in robots and androids, and the use case for AI is actually to have like an android or a robot.
Yeah.
Right. That's where the best use of the technology works. For other things, it's not so clear cut that it actually works right. Yeah. But for that case, it actually works. It's being sold for everything.
I mean, you want, like, when people want to be entertained, look, I'm not writing nonfiction stories here. I'm writing fiction universes purely for entertainment. I don't have a political message. I'm not trying to sell these deeper meanings or whatever. They're just amazing places that I think people might want to spend a few hours living in. And people love the immersion. And I love hearing that. Like like I was completely immersed. Like I didn't even know what was happening. I couldn't put it down. It's like, that's because a real person wrote it.
I remember I used to, be a kid playing Dungeons and Dragons and reading Tolkien. And, we loved playing Dungeons and Dragons because we're kind of taking the Tolkien world and creating our own world.
Yeah.
Through the game. And so as playing that game with the kids in the comic shop, we were able to exercise our fantasy without being on a machine. And we weren't on a computer. We're sitting in a room at some kid's house playing a board game, coming up with all this fantasy stuff, right? And we were inspired by Tolkien. We were listening to Pink Floyd. we're getting all these different things coming in, and we're all just like using our head and not being like force-fed what something should be, right? And I think sometimes today people are being given like a Lego set that's actually pre-built, versus I had Lego sets that had no design. You just built what you wanted.
Yeah, Legos.
Yeah, just a Lego set. It was just a set of parts, and you could build whatever you want. It wasn't like a pre-designed set. All the sets today are like, build this car, build this boat, build this. Like, what if I want to just build something else? So I think we're losing like the sense of wonder, like with an erector set, like Lincoln Logs. The toys I had is like you could just build your own world. Yeah, you find that that's what you do with your writing, right? You want to build your own thing.
Yeah, and that's actually something that people that's a mistake that a lot of people make in writing when they make something too descriptive. Because like I pride myself on being brutally detailed, like brutally, horrifically detailed. But there are certain places that you don't want details. Mm-hmm. Because you want to leave it like let's say you have a building, and for clarification, it's not an important building, it's just there. And you describe this building in beautiful detail down to the color of the grit. You did not do a good thing, because to put it simply, nobody gives a crap. It's just a building. Not only did you waste everybody's time and words, but you removed the imagination of the reader. I want your imagination to enhance the story that I wrote. So I need to leave openings for your imagination to color it yourself. If I'm too descriptive and I'm telling you everything, then it's not the same kind of immersion. It's telling you everything is different from just showing you the story. Like telling voice and showing voice, they're different things.
Yeah, it's kind of like that famous thing, like baby shoes never worn. I think it came from like Hemingway, and it's
Okay.
like, and it like, kind of just says something like you say, well, why weren't they worn? But he doesn't tell you what happens. Like when you leave just a little bit of a hint without being super descriptive, you can lead the reader to like, oh, what's that mean? And I think that's what really good writers like know when to do that, and then know when to describe something. Because if it's actually going to help the plot, then you describe it a little bit more, but.
Because there's a difference between having a great story and being a great storyteller are two different things. I mean, either one is good, but when you can combine the two together, you really create something special. And that's when you get the reaction from readers like, how did you do this? And it's like, I love that. I love it when people say that.
So do you use like beta readers with your books or anything, or do you do that kind of pre-check with a set of trusted like reviewers, or you just how do you do that?
I used to have a couple of I don't want to say proofreaders, but a couple of proofreaders, only because I wasn't sure. Like my writing style is very unique. And in the beginning, I did not think I would be allowed to publish. I thought my work was too dark. I thought the publisher would say like, dude, we cannot put this in print. You went too far. So I would have people kind of help me out, like giving their opinions and stuff. But then I have since learned that like the publishers love it. And books don't work that way. As long as you don't have a picture, you can write whatever you want. Like pictures is where the rating system comes into play.
Once you realize that you were a good, you can execute your vision without a lot of extra, cooks in the kitchen. Because I think that ends up being a problem with some artists to get too many cooks in the kitchen, and we see that a lot. Because even like people using AI to write their books, and I'm like, for a nonfiction book that's like a 10-step self-help book for some guru, fine. I mean, you want to have AI help you write that? I'm not buying it anyway, but but like if you're gonna write something that I want to enjoy, I don't want to know that AI wrote everything. I want to know a human being wrote it.
Well, and once like in the beginning, once I got over that, because my writing style is not going to change. So once that got vetted, I was a lot more comfortable. But then there's things like I said, my writing gets pretty horrific, and some of my characters are female characters. Well, I'm not a female, so there's times where I have to kind of guess what I think is bad. Like for this particular character, I have to guess what I think would be like the worst thing to happen, and I'm guessing it as a guy guessing on behalf of a female. So, and I didn't have any female proofreaders at the time, so I was like, maybe I'm like totally off the wall, but I was very lucky. It's the one time I had a professional editor, and she happened to be a woman. I got lucky on that, and she loved it. She loved everything I did with it, and I was like, great. So now I just sort of just do stuff.
So you said before that you have a really big series with the series Eternal Nights. So you plan on this being like a going like decades?
Probably, yeah. Right now, there's only two. It's a 2-part prequel, but the main series is going to be science fiction. That takes a lot of research. So in the time for researching, that's when I wrote the fantasy books, just so I could, do something in between. But now that fantasy trilogy is all out, the first science fiction book I'll be giving to the publisher maybe in March, maybe. And at this point, it's just however quickly they let me do it. I mean,
so you just have to pace with what the publisher is comfortable putting out.
I mean, it takes me 5 weeks to write one. when I have to actively force myself to not write because it takes over like my entire world when I do it. And I've got like 5 more books on my computer. My publisher's like, no, dude, that's not how business works. You do one at a time.
Yeah. I run into that because I end up putting out so much material. I have to space it out or find different places to put it. Like as a musician, sometimes we can use pseudonyms, like Stephen King used to do that.
Yeah.
So we'll put like, if you got too much work, then you go give it to another band, but or you create another character and you put it out that way, and then you can sneak it out. But there's creative ways that like you still can't put everything out. I mean, you can put more out than you thought, but they don't. I mean, a lot of the times they only want you to put one thing out every 2 years, and I'm like, no, like that. I can't wait 2 years.
I think maybe 9 months is something like that they would do, because it's like I said, the series is going to be like galactic scale with these characters. So there's dozens of books for the main plots. I'm gonna probably write origin stories. There'll be side stories, all right, and just like I said, however often they let me publish, I'll just keep giving them the new ones.
Now, do you work with your publisher on like sync licensing of whether or not somebody wants to like merchandise the book into, because with fantasy characters, people create dolls, they create posters, they create, figures. And have you looked into stuff like that?
Not yet. That's a little bit down the road. Maybe I do have, there is another company I'm working with that's doing like screenplays and things like that. And I love that company I'm working with, and they struggle because they keep saying like, because to make a screenplay, you have to cut things down a lot.
Oh yeah, it's a whole different art form.
And they tell me like they struggle with it. Like, and this is a professional company, and it's like, we don't know how to do this with your books because there's no filler. Like every even little thing ends up tying into something else. It's like, we don't know what to cut. And it's been like a 10-month process to where it's like trying to just shave every little piece here and there, because I don't write filler. I just write the story. It might be 400 pages, but they all matter.
Yeah, when you write a screenplay, it usually drops it down, so you lose some of it. Every time you take a book, you turn it into a teleplay or a screenplay. Like it really kind of, I don't know if it dumbs it down. It depends on who actually takes the screenplay and reinterprets it. Like,
because every page of a screenplay is equivalent to 60 seconds of screen time. So a screenplay really, I mean, if you go over 150 pages, you're really pushing it, because now you're talking about a 2.5-hour movie.
Yeah, so, nobody wants to do those anymore.
Yeah, and it's tough. It's a total like I cannot write a screenplay. That's not my skill set. It would have to be, I can help the person, but I can't take like the captain's hat on that one. It's not my thing.
It's more like maybe that works better for streaming, because if you change it from a movie to like a multi-episode stream, then maybe it would fit.
Yeah. And with technology these days, I've actually had people tell me to take the Wolves and Ravens and turn it into a web series.
Yeah, that's another opportunity, because like web series, my daughter's into manga and anime, and those things go on for like, some mangas have gone on for like a decade. They just go on and on and on and on and on. So like within the Japanese market, having these continuous stories that go on like decade is kind of common.
And that might be something I look at doing with that, because with that trilogy, that's done. That trilogy, it's out, it's published. The Eternal Nights is the one that's going to keep going. So I mean, maybe with the Wolves and Ravens, I'll look at doing extra stuff with it like that down the road. I mean, it's pure it's dark fantasy, but fantasy.
I think that fits. I mean, within the different platforms now, because the streaming platforms, you might have opportunities to take like a piece that doesn't fit into a movie, but it fits into a continual kind of web format or streaming format. Then you actually don't have to compromise, as much.
And I love the like on the website, I love the fact that the publisher, for each one of my books, they made video trailers. So cool. Like each one of my books has like a movie trailer, which is pretty cool. I like cool. They loaded that up onto my website.
But they kind of putting the idea in people's heads, so maybe you can license it to somebody.
That's why they did it. But I love it because I love having video trailers for actual written books, and they do a great job with the website. That's not my thing. I'm not even allowed to have access to it because they assume I'll screw it up. So they do it for me.
Just mentioning that we do have a QR code that actually is tied to your richardspegal.com. So if people want to scan that, and if they get to your website, that's how they can connect with all the material you have out there right now in the world.
Oh yeah, there's the video trailers, there's behind the scene videos. I'm not even allowed to do my own blog. They told me that, like, I wanted to do it, and they were very polite. They were very polite. It's like, look, if you insist, we'll give you administrative access, but we don't trust you. So
they're running it. Well,
so I give them the material, and they manage it, whatever.
Well, sometimes it's good to know, like what your lane is.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I tried to make a website for myself in the beginning, and I was proud. I thought I did a good job, but compared to what the publisher made for me, my website sucked. You know what I mean? What they made is so much better.
Yeah, well, that's where knowing your lane for certain things is good to know.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you for being here on the show. Again, people, like, we got the QR code, and if there's any people, any announcements, any information about what you're doing, everybody can go to richardspegal.com and find that there, right?
Yep. My Instagram at Richard Spegal Books too. I'm trying to figure Instagram out.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll let you know. We thank you for being on the show today. I hope everybody checks out your series of books and gets into your fantasy world of all the things you're doing. We do encourage everybody who watches the show to scan the link or click on the links of the guests that we have on. Check out the material, click through, check it out, download, purchase, buy, support the artists that we have on the show. And I want to thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Have a good night.